Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's me, Gambito Gaming. Been a few weeks since we last covered the topic of scary things found in family-friendly games, and today we are back with some bangers, I must say myself. Like previous episodes, many of the entries have been sourced from you viewers watching the video right now. So if you have a fitting entry for this topic, please leave me a comment with your experience down below, and I'll probably feature it in a future episode. And without further ado, let's get into today's video. Lemmings is an early 90s PC puzzle game that tasked players with guiding the human equivalent of the animal known as a lemming to a goal through an array of puzzles and levels. Yeah, these guys are supposed to be the human anthropomorphic versions of this cute little creature here. I don't really know where the bright green hair fits into that equation, but hey, at least they're way easier to see now. The game is most similar in style to say like a Worms game, but completely different in objective. You'll need to guide the many small lemmings to the exit, which usually means you'll need to set up different jobs for each lemming to do. For example, one is usually tasked with digging, and I gotta say, this is one of the most satisfying digging animations I've ever seen in a video game. What's better, this or a fully enchanted diamond pickaxe digging in Minecraft? I know my answer. Give me this little dude helicoptering his arms all damn day. The game was pretty simple upon its initial release, but due to the overwhelming amount of positive reception the game reached, it got loads of ports and sequels throughout the years. It even ended up in Sony's lap at some point, where the series actually remains today after the development company of the original game, Psygnosis, closed down after being sucked up by the big man Sony themselves. Shout out to you, Sony. What other cool company are you going to kill today? There have been a few attempts to keep the series alive by Sony, like this fully remade PSP game of the first Lemmings game, but that honestly doesn't do the original that much justice. It kind of just looks like one of those old mobile phone games of that era in which this game released, which is what they were probably going for because those were popular at the time, but this just looks bad nowadays.
I worked my ass off to get where I am. And you take these shortcuts and you think suddenly you're my peer?
Regardless of where the series is now, we don't have to look that deep into Lemmings lore to find this entry, as it's present in the first game and is known as the level titled Menacing. He's just standing there, menacingly. Menacing features set pieces like skulls hanging from the ceiling and trapped in blood. Just lovely shit. Not only that, but there is this large demon skeleton at the beginning that the lemmings literally have to chip through, digging through straight bone and bone marrow. The music that accompanies this level isn't very creepy and is honestly pretty hard to listen to in my opinion, as some people think it's good though. I'll play a quick snippet here. So my theory and many other people's theory is that Menacing was meant to act as kind of a nod or an Easter egg level to the Doom series, which was also pretty popular at the time. This would make sense as to the theming of the level and why it seems so out of place in the game, but at the same time I couldn't find anything of the developers ever confirming that this is actually an Easter egg to the Doom series. This would also explain the grungy sounding rock music in the background. Listen, I'm usually all for chiptune demakes of songs in video games, but you can go too far in the past in my opinion, and this song just sounds like a bunch of flies started up this jank bluegrass band and went absolute ham on vocals. The level doesn't last super long, and once you're out of there, it's back to the seemingly normal levels the rest of the game has to offer. I will say though, there is another dedicated hell level in the game where you literally just dig through the number 666 and then exit, but that's kind of just more hilarious than the laziness of that level versus Menacing that could actually be kind of creepy, especially for a kid playing this game. I will say Menacing isn't the only creepy level in the game, as there are other levels in the game that set just the right amount of atmosphere to be put off, and I know I've compared the music in this game to a four-man country band made up of flies, but there are some bangers in this game, don't get me wrong. Overall, Menacing is definitely a creepy level, and the theming is a bit out there, but if you look at the game as a whole, you can definitely find a lot more eerie early 90s computer game shit within it. Kiwi 64 is a very small indie game that aims to capture the charm of the classic 3D platformers of the yesteryear like Banjo-Kazooie and other rare games. This straight up looks like a rare game to me, with rough edges and an A24 film runtime. What the game aims to get right, it seems like it gets right enough from looking from afar, as I've yet to play the game, and it seems, at least in the visual department, to replicate the nostalgic visuals of a Donkey Kong 64-esque game. The game is only sporting a few levels and seems like a project that was probably banged out by a few people as a foundation project for game programming. Not to say the game is lacking in effort or work or anything, but some of the aspects of the game are definitely a little rough, even down to stuff that would have appeared in the games this game is replicating. Things like an intro cinematic is straight up missing here, also with a pretty choppy pause screen that is very obviously trying to emulate the Banjo-Kazooie pause screen with the disembodied head as the selector. I can kind of give them a break though, as it's freeware technically. You can download it from the developers themselves, and it's also available for a few bucks on Steam and the eShop. The game seems to itch a very small scratch created by the blooming nostalgia for these 3D platformers of the yesteryear, but there's definitely been games that have done it a little bit better. I do have to commend the game's visuals though, as it's probably the closest I've seen to a developer replicating that old school visual style. I think it's a good foundation project for the developers, and if they put that kind of effort into a full-fledged 3D platformer, I think it would stand up to at least the revitalization of the 3D platformer recently, but maybe even with some of the older titles. There is a pretty creepy level present in Kiwi 64's short runtime, and that stage is known as the Tomb. This tomb area actually takes place across 2 stages, level 5 and 6, and is by far the strangest departure from the more cheery levels the game presents. The player is expected to platform their way through a level that would look more appropriate in a unique Doom map mod than a 3D collectathon. This is due to the ambience these levels present through strange things like creepy textures littering the walls and doors, flashy unusual color palettes, and a harsh black skybox. It really makes this level very unnerving for unsuspecting players. The level is somewhat a labyrinth, as it starts to resemble that of a Zelda dungeon pretty quickly, at least in level 5, as you are losing your mind running down these similar looking hallways and walls, all while these creepy faces are staring back at you. There are large enemies that take 3 hits to defeat and slowly stalk the player around the room as you make your way through the level. These guys, I don't know, there's just something about them. Not to mention there is a switch mechanic that will unlock and lock certain gates in the level, but the switch for this mechanic is a strange orb with what looks like to be a fetus inside of it. I'm unsure if this is present through the other levels in the game, but this is a little strange to be honest, especially since I don't have the full context of the game. Although, even if I did, I don't know if this would be explained. You know guys, I really didn't know this was a Strand type game. I thought this was a 3D collectathon. The tomb is decorated throughout with rotting corpses and skeletons, along with medieval torture obstacles for the player to dodge. All of this wrapped up with an ominous soundtrack for the level makes this definitely the most unnerving part of the game, but one of the more unnerving levels in a 3D platformer I've seen. The claustrophobic nature of the tomb reminds me of the tombs you'd enter in Angry Aztec and Donkey Kong 64, and this just goes to show, like I said, the game gets right in what it wanted to do, and that was to capture the atmosphere of these old games, not only in visuals but feeling while playing. The tomb level proves to me that a full-fledged 3D platformer from these devs might have a lot more instances of disturbing things throughout, because they got this so right. So I am excited to see if anything else comes from them in the future, along with any other aspiring game developer wanting to tackle this style of game. I'd say one thing to definitely include is a lonely, disturbing level like the tomb here, or the many examples from the previous 3D platformer games we've loved throughout the years. These just add so much character to the game and usually are pretty unexpected, which is 100% what Super Kiwi 64 delivered with this area of the game. On my last video, someone commented about a strange occurrence that takes place in the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, specifically the first games, Red and Blue Rescue Team. I never played much of the Mystery Dungeon games apart from the remake demo on the Switch, so I'd say I'm pretty well versed. Nah, but from what I played, it doesn't seem like my type of game really, but it's clear there are fans for the series, and many are super nostalgic for these games. There's been a decent few that have released since the series started on the Game Boy Advance, but today's creepy occurrence takes place in the original first games. This occurrence happens when the player remains on the floor for too long, or when the game deems it too long anyway. You might still have shit to do on the floor, but f you, get out of here. And in order to force the player to get the fuck out of Dodge, the game attempts to scare the player off the floor. They do this through ominous messaging that something strange has entered the floor and is slowly approaching you. As more time passes, the messages get more and more ominous until finally the player is whisked away out of the dungeon without visual confirmation of what hit them in the first place. This entity that ultimately blows the player out of the dungeon is still unknown, but many believe it to be Arceus controlling the events of the game and ultimately deciding when the player has been on the floor long enough. However, others might suggest that the entity isn't meant to be explained at all, as like the title of the game suggests, it's a mystery dungeon, so of course mysterious shit's gonna happen. If this is true, it seems like this edition was intentionally made to be ominous by the developers. The game is overall very friendly in nature with cheery Pokemon music you'd expect in the universe, but when your time's up, the nice cheery music is cut off and all you hear is wind gusts. It truly is unnerving. Even just watching gameplay of this scene taking place, I could easily see how this spooked the hell out of anyone playing this as a kid. The original comment that brought this up to me stated they never fucked around and found out what happened in the end, and I think I'd be the same way. Much like the angry Aztec sniper yelling "get out" in my small adolescent years in Donkey Kong 64, I wouldn't stick around in there to get JFK'd by K. Rool, so why the hell would I stick around in the dungeon for some invisible Godzilla monster to catch my ass lacking? Not only that, but in this game, infamously, there's a Pokemon known as Kecleon, and he's pretty frightening in this game. It isn't due to any mysterious threat that you can't see either, as this is just a case of serving good old justice. Well, kind of. If you visit the Kecleon shop and pick up some items, as you leave he'll rush towards you seeking payment, and he gives you two options. If you can't pay or say no, his hand is forced, and he will shortly end the player's life.
Y'all don't have my money. No, we have it. It's just, not right now.
I have to break your neck.
Whoa. Hang on,
It's just
we
the
can
way
talk
it
about
is.
this.
It is possible to get away from Kecleon before he murks you, but it's very hard from what I've seen online, and it's best to make sure you have the right funds before you even enter Kecleon's bazaar here. If not, he will see to it that your life is ended swiftly and tragically. Don't mess with this guy, alright? He doesn't look like much, but he has the spirits of the ancients backing him up or some shit. Look at these moves he's rocking with. Alright guys, I'm about to talk way too long about Yokai Watch, but hear me out, there's some good stuff in this one. Yokai Watch is a series that has popped up in my comments by quite a few of you guys, and it seems like it has a lot of creepy moments held within the series of games. At this point, there are quite a few Yokai Watch games out there, but they all share similar characteristics and gameplay, so I thought I'd cover the series as a whole here, with a few entries that were suggested to me from the comments you guys left. I can only assume I'm chipping at the top layer of the creepy stuff in this series, so please let me know of anything else you can think of from the Yokai Watch series in the comments, and I'll try to do an updated entry in the future video if there's enough there. Anyway, let's go ahead and hop into the meat and potatoes with something known as Terror Time. A little side note, here's a quick synopsis of the series from a guy who's played like 5 hours of the first game on 3DS. It's like a more modernized version of the Pokemon series, but very different from that series at the same time. You have the same basic objectives as the game, catching different yokai and battling with them, but the origins and the yokai themselves are much different than the Pokemon. Sorry if that was a bastardized cut of yokai, but I thought I might throw out a small synopsis for those unfamiliar. Anyway, let's hop in. Terror Time is something that happens in the mainline series of the games. It's something in the game's universe that's supposed to represent a reprimand for breaking the rules of the Yokai Watch universe. Since these games are aimed more towards children, it makes sense that this would be the origin of something like this, since teaching the importance of rules is something useful to kids. You know, they need to learn that shit. Wait until they learn there isn't a terror time for breaking the rules and it's actually just jail in real life. This is kind of why Terror Time takes place at night and in the early morning of Yokai Watch, since your character is expected to be indoors past curfew. So whenever you are out late at night, even if you're doing a mission or something, you're technically breaking the rules, son. Along with stuff like breaking traffic rules and different degenerate things like that, all of this could send you straight to Terror Time. And I gotta say, I think I'd rather just go sit in time out and face the damn corner of a wall or something. In Terror Time, not only will the setting of the game change to this monochromatic hell, but entities known as Gargarus, Orgralus, and Orcanus all will show up in a form of a huge demonic Oni entity that will chase the player throughout the duration of Terror Time. The objective of this mode evolves over the 3 games, but the basic idea is you have to find your way out and dodging the many enemies that litter the town during Terror Time. These enemies won't harm the players in most cases and will only alert the Oni to the player's location, so it is best to try and dodge these guys. There is a set of gold doors you will need to make it to in order to escape this hellscape, but if you fail to do so, you will awaken in your bed assuming it was just a nightmare. The music during these segments isn't what I'd call particularly creepy, but definitely adds to the chaos that's going on around you. Overall, it really gives me vibes from the Silent Realms from Skyward Sword we talked about last time, where it just acts as a stealth mission but with consequences that aren't worth getting caught for. This is a great entry for this series because it hits all of the notes of a good creepy segment from a kid's game. That being a rushed feeling while playing, but the game requiring stealth, which is inherently slower, which is always a good time, and a giant monster stalking you, and a creepy hellscape for a backdrop. You know, good stuff, yokai devs. This is pretty creepy. The Infinite Tunnel and Hazy Lane are infamous at this point if you are at all familiar with the yokai series. This comment brought these to my attention and they both share similarities but ultimately are 2 of the scariest parts of the series, bar none. Even looking from afar, I can tell exactly what the developers were going for with this addition of these segments. The basic idea of the Infinite Tunnel and Hazy Lane is to provide the player with a seemingly infinite loop, even though it's not technically infinite, for them to keep fighting monsters and leveling up. However, as you go deeper into the tunnel or lane, respectively, things start to get stranger and stranger. This concept first cropped up in Yokai Watch 2 with the Infinite Tunnel. This tunnel is exactly what it sounds like, alright? It's a long-ass tunnel that goes on for seemingly forever. Before you even enter, there's a warning sign that is everything ominous wrapped up into one little sign. Look at this shit. It warns that the length of the tunnel changes every time the player enters, and when you enter, there's no turning back. That's right, it's like an old school Mario game. You left your mushroom back there? Get fucked, idiot. If this isn't ominous enough, you'll surely want to book it straight back out when you see what the inside of the tunnel looks like. The tunnel is a narrow walkway with a pitch black void sitting in front of the player. As they descend further into darkness, more and more creatures will pop up for them to fight. Luckily, things stay pretty calm most of the time within the tunnel, but that doesn't stop the atmosphere from getting to the player in here. The comment that was left referencing these segments even compared it to the SCP in the stairwell, which was a popular internet legend in the SCP realm that eventually got turned into a creepy game with the same mechanic as the Infinite Tunnel, but much more devastating. You're expected to keep walking down these stairs until you finally reach the SCP at the bottom before it seemingly kills you out of nowhere. Very creepy experience. You're going down the stairs for a minute. You think it goes on forever until it doesn't. This entry gives me those vibes so much, and I don't know if it's just because I went into this entry with that in mind from this comment, but it's definitely creepy even looking from afar. Things get a little bit more messed up when we take a look over at the 3rd game in the series that brought back this concept in the way of Hazy Lane. Looking from an outsider's perspective, this area might not seem visually as creepy as Infinite Tunnel in the 2nd game, but in reality the strange occurrences that happen on the Hazy Lane make the Infinite Tunnel seem like a walk through the park. Maybe Central Park, but still, it's a park. At first, the Hazy Lane will seem like a nice walk down a garden's path, but things quickly turn strange. This section really makes me feel like I'm watching someone play out the events of the found footage film As Above, So Below, but in a kid's game. If you've never seen it, it basically follows a group of explorers going through the treacherous Paris catacombs underground, but things get pretty paranormal pretty quickly. Things like phones, cars, and things from the character's past start popping up in the catacombs miles below the earth and of what is possible under Paris. Strange things start happening in Hazy Lane pretty similarly to the movie, even down to a phone booth appearing and oftentimes leaving the player with broken dialogue they can't piece together from the other end. Not to mention, as you go further into the Hazy Lane, you will start experiencing what I can only describe as hallucinations, in which gravity itself reverses for everything around you except the player, as you see NPCs hanging on for dear life, and even a few losing grip here and there. Holy shit.
Where did he go? Like, wait, hold on. Where did he go, though?
This idea alone is kind of terrifying concept for a kid's game, as I don't know about you, but I'd probably shit myself if gravity just randomly flipped the other way one day. Since there is no telling how lucky or unlucky you'll get in the Hazy Lane's length, the only thing to do is keep pushing forward no matter how creepy it gets. The Infinite Tunnel and Hazy Lane also features secret boss enemies that are each pretty creepy in design, especially this thing from Hazy Lane. Looks like something out of Kirby. Overall, these are some of the most ominous and intriguing parts of the yokai series for me. I haven't played a lot of them, but stuff like this makes me want to try out the series again. I know I'm not directly the target audience for a game like this, but I don't know if kids are either with strange shit like this present in it. Perhaps if they were to remake all three on Switch one day, I will finally have to face down the Infinite Tunnel and Hazy Lane myself. Nocturne Hospital was brought to my attention by this comment, which stated that they think this chapter in the first Yokai Watch is in fact creepier than both the Infinite Tunnel and the Hazy Lane. Listen, it's all up to interpretation, but I can definitely see what this comment was talking about, as at least for Yokai Watch 1, this is probably the most unnerving mission in that game. During Chapter 10, the character will visit an abandoned hospital, which has very clearly been abandoned for a hot minute. After walking down the many claustrophobic hallways and battling the many strange enemies in the hospital, you will begin to become examined by the hospital staff. And by hospital staff, I just mean these weird looking dudes here. Apparently there is something up with the main character's heart in this segment. I didn't look too hard into the lore leading up to this chapter, so perhaps someone else in the comments can fill us in about what's going on here. But basically you're forced to take these strange exams in order to cure the main character of the strange heart disease. These exams will end up bringing you to the director of the hospital. This is after you lay down on a random gurney in the middle of the hallway, which then whisks you away to the director's office, separating you from the main yokai pal in the game, Whisper. If this isn't already daunting enough, you get rolled into the director's office where you meet him in his human form. After some strange dialogue, the director transforms into his final form known as Dr. Matty Man. He could have worked on the name a little bit, let's be honest. Man, this guy's straight kitted out to be a menace, as he has a Wolverine claw in his left hand with what appears to be sharp surgical tools jutting out of his fist. Not only that, but he also appears to be on some sort of life support, as he has a large bag attached to his heart. The suddenness of the boss battle and the director's transformation made a creepy impact on the kids who played this when it first came out, and even this comment states he is their favorite character in the game series due to the introduction and how much of an impact he had. Overall in design, I can definitely say he's unnerving, and he even reminds me of the Doctor character from the WarioWare games that always creep me out way too much. Dr. Matty Man definitely didn't help any kids who might have been afraid of doctors and needles before, but hey, who needs that when you could have one of the spookiest boss battles in a kid's game? I think this entire chapter should be lumped in with Dr. Matty Man, as he's just a cherry on top of a creepy urban exploration to try and get this kid's blood pressure back down or something. I'm still a little bit confused as to why he's in the hospital to begin with, but... This next entry tackles the broad open ocean, and unlike other games that would take advantage of the natural fear of the ocean a lot of humans have by adding in larger than life creatures that wouldn't really exist on Earth, at least today. In the case of Endless Ocean, the fear came naturally. This was mostly due to how accurate the game wanted to portray the ocean and ocean life itself. I never personally played the game, but I watched quite a bit on the game through different playthroughs and even through my research for this entry. Sure, the game hasn't aged that great in terms of visuals, but the overall idea of being able to explore the ocean to your heart's extent is still here. Also, there are a few more games that have come out since that may have gotten a few mechanics of ocean exploration a bit better or even more fluid, but none have captured the fear that some of these older games like Endless Ocean present. And a game I love talking about anytime I can, Shark Hunting the Great White, were both great examples of exploring the idea of thalassophobia in video games. A huge part of the thalassophobia I have is the creatures that lie deep in the bottom of the ocean, and the fact we don't know a lot about the ocean, especially as we go deeper down. Therefore, whenever it's portrayed in a game like this, there really is no way to know just how far the developers will go. However, in Endless Ocean, they keep things pretty realistic throughout. One of the objectives in the Abyss is to find and study the giant squid, and for many they were expecting to go down there and find a squid that was larger than life itself. Take, for example, this comment I found that states they were expecting to just at a moment's notice see a giant squid eye open in front of them, unknowingly that they were staring at the squid the whole time and not into the deep dark ocean. However, Endless Ocean keeps it relatively tame in this department, but that doesn't mean this part isn't creepy. It's just a different type of creepy. Like this comment stated, the game is able to be creepy by accident by just accurately portraying the ocean, especially the depths like the abyss. They don't need to add these larger than life krakens to impact the player because, well, the ocean itself is enough. Endless Ocean is a testament to just how intriguing the ocean is, and I'm not surprised the series has the following it does. And hey, it doesn't hurt there's a new game being released on Switch soon. That's pretty hype. I might finally have to hop into the series myself, because the ocean, like many others, equally intrigues me and terrifies me all at the same time. Banjo-Kazooie is the source of many of my fears of these old 3D platformers, that and Donkey Kong 64 at least. There was just a certain terrifying charm Rareware could add to these games that even other games that released at the same time couldn't capture. One of the spookiest parts of the series comes from the first game in the level known as Mad Monster Mansion. Clearly from the name, the level is purposely supposed to be scarier in nature, right? But this is mostly a kid's game, so how bad could it really be? Well, let's just start with the entrance of the level, right? Which honestly terrified me more at times than the level did when I was a kid. The level entrance is inside the large grunty head structure inside her lair, and if that's not creepy enough, the next room is just a small ledge overlooking a large lava pit. It never made sense to me for there to be a lava pit in here, as we weren't going to a lava world, but looking back at it, it succeeds in providing a very precarious, nerve-wracking walk to the spookiest level in the game. The camera angles used in this room make the pit feel much larger than it probably actually is, and you're standing pretty high up because if you fall off, it'll take a minute for Banjo to hit the lava below. And this room is also the unlock puzzle for Gobi Desert, but otherwise this hellish room only serves as the entrance to Mad Monster Mansion. Once you exit the lava room, you are brought to the actual level entrance for Mad Monster Mansion, which takes place outside in a graveyard. Upon entering Mad Monster Mansion, nothing off rip is super creepy, but I think the accumulation of everything in the level makes this level stand out to me. The music that greets the player is pretty creepy immediately, but slowly transforms into a more wacky track that evolves into a typical Banjo-Kazooie banger. It's really the jiggies and the objectives in this level that bring the creep factor up for me, at least for when I was a kid. For example, you'll be walking through bush mazes filled with skeletons, playing a mock Ouija board with Banjo and Kazooie's big ass mugs in the center of it. You know, I asked the Ouija board if Bottles went to heaven or hell, but then I remembered that Bottles dies in Banjo-Tooie, and you know, ever since then Banjo hasn't been looking at me. So I think I really worried him about Bottles' fate there. I still haven't mentioned he comes back. I'll let that dumbass bear ride this one out for a little bit, but still, I kind of feel bad. There are a lot of indoor claustrophobic feeling areas in Mad Monster Mansion, like this haunted cellar here, which includes ghosts. Hence the haunted part. The ghost designs aren't the scariest, but there's something about the noises they make, and if they're not making you laugh, it's gonna off-put you for sure. It's either one, take it. Which pill do you want? You want to laugh or you want to be scared? The main mansion you enter here has one of the creepiest boss characters, who isn't even technically a boss, but is creepy, especially if you aren't Solid Snake. That's right, that's because you have to sneak up on this guy to get his jiggy, as he has a pinpoint hearing and is able to hear Banjo's big ass mitts hitting the wooden floor. You have to come in through the roof and take a path along these soft cloth table chairs, and Kazooie trot across the table to sneak inside and take the jiggy right from under Napper. Otherwise, he will lock the player out of the jiggy by waking up and creating one of the creepiest sound clips in the game with this eerie ass laugh. Another noteworthy location is the church, which is located out back and seems to be a normal sized building from the outside, but upon entering you'll think you just walked into the Great Kali's house itself, as everything in here is way bigger than any normal sized creature in this universe. If you don't have a fear of giant things, then this segment likely won't be too bad for you, but when you roll up on the piano, you will meet the ghost pianist, who is just represented by two floating disembodied gloves. Dude, you're totally biting Master Hand style right now, dude. Just fucking stop. After playing Beethoven's Fur Elise on this big ass piano with full seconds in between each note because of how big it is, you will impress the ghost enough who will gift you a jiggy. From here you unlock Kazooie's flight pad where you can truly get a better scale of the absolute size of this room. Who died who was this fucking big, dude? Holy shit. I think there are still more unnerving levels in the Banjo-Kazooie series, maybe like the circus from the second game, which I might talk about in the future, but I couldn't not mention Mad Monster Mansion, man. It served as a great spooky level, not only in execution, but probably making it more terrifying than it needed to be with, you know, these blocky, obscure-ass ghost designs and a dash of megalophobia. Turned my 7-year-old brain inside out, bro, and had me racing out of this level whenever I had enough jiggies. Except for that lava room, man. I'm granny walking the shit out of that every time. Can't catch my ass lacking and falling into that lava ever again, dude. I've mentioned the Animal Crossing games briefly in the series before, covering things like the gyroid face curse from the first game. Quick editor note here, I'm pronouncing gyroids as gyroids this video. Sorry, it's how I pronounced them growing up. I know they're gyroids because they gyrate. I wouldn't use the term gyrate. I'm not that dumb. Alright, give me a little credit. But a fun game you can play is to click the dislike button anytime you hear me mispronounce the word gyroid in this video, and hopefully for my sake, by the end of it, I've said it an even amount of time, so that dislike will not appear for me. But yeah, sorry about that. But there is a bunch of smaller creepy occurrences that have occurred in the Animal Crossing series that I want to talk about. These definitely aren't as creepy as the absolute nightmare that is the gyroid face curse, but I think they're still odd for occurring in the Animal Crossing series in the first place. Animal Crossing is a game that is 99% of the time very bright and cheery, but when that 1% rears its ugly mug, man, things get pretty creepy. Crazy Red has been a reoccurring character since the first Animal Crossing, and he's always been Animal Crossing's equivalent of Silk Road. You know, you think you're getting some good product, but when you open it, it's just oregano in a great value Ziploc. You got ripped off. Crazy Red deals in the shady business of the black market, meaning sometimes he'll sell the player fake paintings. This is only a problem if the player is trying to complete the art exhibit in the museum, as Blathers is a big, huge nerd who can spot a fake from miles away and won't take it. However, in Animal Crossing New Horizons, there was something added to the fake paintings that changed the want to hold on to these paintings. I don't know, maybe you're fucked up and you want to collect these things and open a museum like Zach Bacon's, but for a majority of the players, they likely won't want these haunted paintings hanging around in their house. That's right, in Animal Crossing New Horizons, there are a few paintings that if you buy the fake version, you will end up getting a cursed haunted painting instead. The spookiest of these paintings is definitely the wistful painting in which the subject's eyes can be seen closing at nighttime. You can actually catch the moment the eyes switch over to, and if that's not on some Hogwarts ass shit, man, then I don't know what is. Other paintings, like the graceful painting, shows a strange human-like stain on the back of the painting. I don't know what this means, but maybe they killed someone on the back of the painting and their blood stained it, or that the shadow is supposed to be a spirit or something. I don't know what they were going for with this one. There are a couple of haunted statues as well that will add a strange light to the tablet statue, and the haunted ancient statue will actually start floating around and doing a little jig. I wish they had made more haunted variants for all the paintings in the game. That would have made it really cool to have a room dedicated fully to this haunted art. Oh god, maybe I am Zach Bagans. Aliens aren't super prominent in the Animal Crossing series, at least to a degree that someone like Rockstar Games takes it to. I swear, they got the guy from Ancient Aliens on payroll for every GTA and Red Dead game to come out. Even if they aren't showing up and abducting Tom Nook every night at midnight, there's still an alien presence in the Animal Crossing universe. The most convincing evidence of this comes from Animal Crossing New Leaf and New Horizons. At certain times of the night, at random nights, you can catch a glimpse of an alien taking control of the local broadcast networks, a la the Max Headroom incident, and broadcasting the nastiest face reveal of all time. This usually occurs in the wee hours of the night, at the witching hour typically, and you will need a TV to see this Easter egg in both games. The Easter egg is mostly unchanged in New Horizons, but the alien now took the selfie like every Uber driver ever does, where it's like that up angle shot from below. Other than this, Gulliver does arrive in a UFO in a couple of the games, I think Wild World and City Folk, but ultimately this is all the information we have on an alien species in an Animal Crossing series. Nothing but a few cool Easter eggs, right? Well, there is further confirmations that this probably is actually canonly happening in the Animal Crossing universe, as at the end of the Animal Crossing movie, that word, that title right there, that one, The cast is helping an actual alien who takes the form of this weird shape-shifting blob creature. I do think most of what's in the movie is canon since it shares similar animals from the games, so even though the aliens featured in the games don't resemble that of the alien in the movie, it's clear that aliens in some fashion do actually exist in the Animal Crossing universe, and any mention of them shouldn't be taken too lightly. Sure, this could be Tom Nook in a cheap Dollar Tree costume, filming it on an old BlackBerry phone and broadcasting it to the island residents in hopes of keeping the rent lower around the area. But what if it isn't? Zipper T. Bunny is a pretty infamous figure at this point if you've played some of the more recent Animal Crossing games. The character was first introduced back on the Wii in Animal Crossing City Folk, but it wasn't until his reappearance in New Horizons that people really started to put Zipper under a microscope. The hints at this character just being a guy in a bunny costume has been there since the beginning, but the developers have accepted the gag and make constant references to it now, especially in New Horizons. You can even get Zipper to mention the fact he has a zipper on his back by talking to his back in the game. Several villagers in City Folk also claim to be scared of Zipper or get an overall uneasy feeling around him due to him dropping the facade around them and being a miserable person overall. He will start to do this more in New Horizons too. As the player seemingly walks away, you can see Zipper in the background sigh and slouch, suggesting he's not actually digging this gig he's got himself set up with. There are constant references to the fact that Zipper isn't actually a real rabbit, even including the description of the Smash Bros. Trophy. However, with all this tongue-in-cheek from the developers, we still don't have a solid answer as to who's behind this facade. I myself like a good mystery, and when you add in the fact Zipper T. Bunny is basically a FNAF character at this point, roaming your Animal Crossing town for a few months out of the year, I mean, the guy's pretty creepy, come on. There have been some suspects throughout the years, like Phyllis, the nighttime clerk at the post office. This was mainly a rumor started due to the fact for a while they were the only animals that would really talk to themselves in the gray dialogue, and the fact that they were both pretty moody. It's also speculated that Tom Nook could be Zipper, but I've also heard in the past he could be Jesus Christ too, so I'm not taking that one too seriously. It's now time for the honorable mention section. This is a choice few entries that were suggested to me that didn't work out to be full entries, but I still wanted to mention them here because they're creepy. So it's going to be kind of like a quick fire little rundown of a few more entries that I found interesting enough to want to talk about, but not making the full entries themselves, just kind of tacking them on the end of the video here. But regardless, let's go ahead and hop in to the honorable mention section. We've breached the subject of Twilight Princess in this series before, but perhaps one of the creepiest things to come from the game isn't actually in the game at all. This comment brought this to my attention, and it fits into every category of what I find creepy in one of these entries. And yes, it includes a mirror. In Twilight Princess, if you enter Link's home, you can enter his basement in the back of his house, accessible by a ladder. When you get down there, you are met with pitch blackness surrounding you from all sides, and you can only see if you bring your lantern down there. In the basement, you'll find a purple rupee in a chest, and that's seemingly it. However, in the adjacent corner to the chest is a small mirror that Link can look into. While this will do nothing in the game, it sparked a lot of rumors that if you waited long enough in the dark staring into the mirror, that Dark Link himself would show up behind the player jump scaring them. While this has never been confirmed from solid evidence, there are some interesting videos online that show me how this rumor might have started. Like this video where Link himself kind of resembles Dark Link. However, the jump scare was never true, and you'd have to wait to visit Old Yita to experience that form of horror in the game. However, I think the atmosphere alone in Link's basement is enough to unnerve your average player, but then you add in this pretty clean, high quality mirror in the corner. It's no wonder how this rumor got started, really. Definitely gives me the same creepy feeling any of the other mirrors and any of the other games I've mentioned before have, so thanks for the entry suggestion. I definitely played my fair share of Dino Run back in the computer class when I should have been paying attention, or on a hot summer day at 2 p.m. with several other AAA games staring me down from across the room as I played a game that was probably made in a couple days. Dino Run has since launched into its own game being titled Dino Run Deluxe with a more refined showing, but regardless, it's largely the same game. Dino Run is a pretty simple game looking from afar, but there is a lot underneath the surface here. The main objective of the game is taking control of a small dinosaur, presumably a velociraptor or something, and your goal is to outrun the Wall of Doom. This Wall of Doom was created as a result of the dinosaur's extinction, which in this game is a giant volcano erupting. This giant wall of ash and flaming boulders is constantly stampeding towards the player, and it's a constant battle of trying to maintain your speed and momentum against the giant wall of death. It reminds me of the Muncher Marathon level from Donkey Kong Country Returns, but with a lot darker implications. If you are unfortunate enough to get close to the wall of death, all other sounds from the game are masked in a large rumbling of absolute chaos that I can only compare to the videos you see of people in the middle of a tornado hitting their home. I know I just compared a Flash game to something that kills people, but you get the idea, right? After this, the death screen is very simple and deafening after such a rush of adrenaline like surfing the wall of death, which is what the game calls it if you're able to regain your footing and make it away from the wall. Not only is the wall of death unnerving, but the idea that a lot of dinosaurs that you're running with and into will likely meet of the very fate you're trying to run from. Hell, there are even some dinosaurs that are doomed from the start as they are stuck in tar and can't move, only for the player to use them as a stepping stone in their own survival. It gets pretty messed up when you look past the super simplistic nature of the game. If you like the runner genre of game and haven't played this one, I recommend the deluxe version, which is pretty cheap on Steam. Also, they have announced a sequel that is still in development, but it looks pretty promising as it seems to be shifting focus to a more sandbox type of experience. Well, at least it looks like the dinos are having a whole hell of a lot more fun in the sequel than they were with the Wall of Death in the first game. The betas for games are often the stripped down, more basic versions of their final games to usually show off the main aspect of a game without all the sweet stuff added in yet to make it a full experience. Nowhere was this more the case than with the first Crash Bandicoot, as most of the game in its beta was picked clean of anything that makes Crash great today. The creepiest part by far is the lack of music in each level, and it's not like you're playing in complete silence, as the music in the game is the only thing lacking in the beta. As many levels were playable from the beta that appear in the final game, we can finally see what Crash Bandicoot looks like as a horror game. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but you can't tell me running around these levels in absolute silence doesn't creep you out a little bit. Alright, if that doesn't do it, let's take a look at the iconic boulder level, where Crash is running Jones style from this big boulder some asshole left to crush Crash. Without the music, this level feels more like you're actually just trying to save this Bandicoot's life from being squashed by a large rock, just like how it would happen in nature. Am I watching Planet Earth or playing a PS1 game right now? Holy shit. It's times like this where the lack of music really grounds the game from being a wacky 3D platformer into being a bleak run through this creature's worst week on Earth. Holy shit. I feel bad for Crash. Alright, this one was too obscure and weird of an entry not to include, but if you're not familiar with the Chicken Run film, it was an animated film from the people who brought the world Wallace and Gromit. It ended up getting a PS1 game that gives me the Barnyard game vibes, but that's for another time. Can't even open that barrel of monkeys yet. The game doesn't look particularly fun or interesting as I've never played it, but if you played this as a kid, I can see how you could get some bang for your buck out of it back then. One particularly creepy segment of the game is the large stealth segments where you're usually sneaking around human patrol guards, or even worse, they're large Ladagos, dude. Sorry, I had my Reddit switch flipped on. Let me go ahead and just, yeah, there we go. Alright, sorry, I meant to say they're big dogs, you know? These mutts will end up chasing the player and is pretty hard pressed to let go, and every time an enemy, whether it's a human or a dog, shows up, your heartbeat will start to increase, which is just straight out of a horror game. That mechanic has been used before, I swear, but I've never seen it used in a kids game like this. It adds so much tension to the chases and really makes you want to hide away in your own skin when you end up getting close or to getting caught. Once you end up getting caught as well, the dogs don't hold back as they corner the chicken in what I can best describe as the death scenes from the Arkham games, but this giant polygonal out fucking dog is here instead of Joker. The name of the game is Chicken Run, but you chicken walked, Batman. The game as a whole feels like a weird fever dream and is pretty ominous all the way through the short playtime, as most of the game is just this large stealth segment dodging these junkyard dogs. Hey, great entry, thanks for the comment. Alright, that's going to do it for today's video. Went a little bit longer than I expected it to. This will be interesting to see how long it ends up being, but regardless, leave me some more comments for entries in future videos. As always, I appreciate all the entries you guys have left, and if you've left one already, are wondering if you should leave it again, no need. I have a huge spreadsheet I'm getting through any previous entries people have mentioned to me, and they will be in future videos. So without taking your guys' time too much today, I appreciate all the likes and support recently, all the subscribers. We hit 15K recently, which is a pretty big milestone. I hadn't had a chance to talk about it. Also, sorry for the slower uploads. The Wario World video really took a number out you, boy. It took me about 2 weeks to make that video. So, but if you haven't seen that video, make sure to check it out as well. It's basically a deeper dive into Wario World, a very strange and obscure game from the Nintendo GameCube. Subscribe if you're new here. You can find all my previous Iceberg videos in the Iceberg playlist down below. I gotta update that bitch. It's been a minute, but I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.